Back in the 1980s, I gave up the 3 child grooms I had grown up with, each destined to become a top elite in the military, political, and business worlds, and chose instead to marry Ryan Carter, a cold-faced man from the compound who was already divorced and raising 3 kids. My dad thought I had been possessed. After all, each of those 3 child grooms was exceptional in his own right. Any one of them seemed better than a middle-aged man with children from a previous marriage. But he didn't know the truth. In my past life, I married the military elite my father favored the most, Andrew Lewis. I brought with me a dowry worth a fortune. But Andrew's heart was always with his country. Just 1 month after our wedding, he died in an accident. I was devastated beyond words. Then came Peter Sullivan, a rising political star, who offered to marry me. I was filled with hope and joy and accepted. But on the day of our wedding, Peter was assassinated on the spot. While people accused me of bringing misfortune and even death to my husbands, Michael Evans, a renowned business magnate, stepped forward and married me in a grand ceremony, silencing all the rumors. But even Michael died on our wedding day, poisoned by an old enemy. 3 husbands, 3 deaths. I was branded a cursed woman. In the end, no one dared marry me. I lived out my life alone and miserable. But after my death, my spirit saw something that shattered me. Those 3 men who were supposed to have died had faked their deaths, and were now surrounding my stepsister, Emily, swearing their loyalty to her. Only then did I realize the person they had truly loved all along was Emily. They resented me for always picking on her, and to avenge her, they staged their deaths to deceive me. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to that day, when my father asked me whom I wanted to marry. Bookmark, go back. "You've always clung to Andrew since you were a kid," he said. "You'll probably choose little Andrew for the wedding next week, right?" Honestly, I agree. He's a solid pick. I suddenly screamed, startling him. In front of me stood not the frail, starving man from my past life, but my father in his full health and strength. Yet tears flooded down my cheeks without warning. In my past life, I had married 3 times, and with each dowry, I drained every cent my father had. In the end, the man who had once been a wealthy and respected healer died of starvation. Watching him now, frantically pulling out a handkerchief to wipe my tears, I couldn't hold back anymore. "Dad, I've made my decision. I want to marry Ryan Carter." My father leapt from his chair in shock. "What? You want to marry that divorced man with 3 kids? That's not acceptable." He was so stunned, he dropped his smoking pipe. "I picked out 3 child grooms for you. How can you not want even one of them?" I lowered my head and stayed silent. It wasn't that I didn't care about them. I still remembered their tragic deaths after marrying me. Those moments of grief and despair were burned into my memory. After a long pause, I finally said, "Dad, I want to marry Ryan Carter. I'm willing to honor the engagement made back then." The moment I mentioned the engagement, my father's expression shifted. No one had known that Ryan and I once had a verbal marriage agreement. But because the Carter family was powerful, Dad had worried I'd be mistreated after marrying in, so he found me 3 child grooms instead. Who could have imagined that those 3 would grow up into ungrateful traitors, white-eyed wolves who stole all our family's wealth and left the country with Emily to live a perfect, happy life, leaving us to fend for ourselves. Even at the moment of his death, my father had muttered that he wished he could eat just 1 more steamed cornbread bun. So in this life, I didn't want those child grooms who faked their deaths for my stepsister. I only wanted Ryan. After getting my father's approval, I stepped out of the study. Just outside, I saw the 3 of them, Andrew, Peter, and Michael, surrounding Emily, who was dressed in a white gown, laughing and joking with her. The moment they saw me, their laughter stopped. In the past, seeing that would have made me burn with shame. I would have lashed out at Emily in anger, only to anger the 3 of them in return. But this time, I didn't even spare them a glance. I turned around and went straight back to my room. As I closed the door, someone grabbed my wrist. "Didn't you hear Emily calling you?" It was Michael, staring at me angrily. Facing Andrew's furious face, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of disgust. The tension between us didn't bother Emily at all. With teary eyes, she dropped to her knees in front of me. "Sis, I never meant to steal your fiancé, but I couldn't control how I felt." Seeing me unmoved, Andrew suddenly picked her up in his arms. "That's enough, Emily. You did nothing wrong. If your family hadn't threatened me with a debt of gratitude for raising me, I would never have agreed to be some damn child groom." He turned to me coldly. "Let me tell you, Rachel, I will never marry you. The only person I truly love is Emily. If you really care about me, you should let me go." Seeing Andrew look so crazed for love made me feel a little confused. I clearly remembered that in my last life, Andrew didn't refuse to marry me, so why was he rejecting me now? Could it be he was reborn too? But even if he was, what did it matter? In this life, I would never have anything to do with any of them again. "Fine," I said, "I'll let you go." "You really mean that?" he asked, stunned. "I do," I replied calmly with a nod. But to my surprise, Andrew's face twisted into a look of deep sarcasm. "Rachel, do you really think I'm gonna fall for your lies again? What? Are you planning to drug me again like you tried to last year?" At the mention of drugging, Peter and Michael, who had been standing to the side, burst out laughing. "Yeah," Peter sneered. "Everyone in the compound knows our precious little miss here nearly went to insane lengths just to marry Andrew." Michael added with a mocking grin, "Didn't she almost trap him with that little drugging stunt at his birthday party?" Their harsh words made my face go pale. I'd explained 1,000 times that Andrew had been drugged at his birthday party by someone else, not me. But no matter how many times I denied it, they wouldn't believe me. They insisted I was obsessed with Andrew, and had tried to seduce him by force, hoping to tie him down with a scandal. I opened my mouth to defend myself again, but just then, I heard the butler's enthusiastic voice from the foyer. "Mr. Carter!" "What a surprise! What brings you here today?" The moment the name Ryan Carter was spoken, the expressions on all three of their faces changed instantly. Because, despite being called elites, none of them could compare to the real deal standing at the top. Ryan Carter. Before him, they didn't even have the right to be noticed. Without a word, and without even glancing at him, the three of them turned and slipped out from the other side of the massive villa in a hurry. I stood there, listening to the sound of Ryan's boots as they climbed the steps, and a strange nervousness rose in my chest. Why was he here? Did Dad inform him that quickly? While I was still wrestling with the thought, a beautifully wrapped box was handed to me. "For the wedding in 7 days," he said. "This is the dress I had made for you." I looked up in surprise, meeting the handsome face in front of me. "You agreed?" The corners of Ryan's lips curled into a smile. "Of course. I've admired you for quite some time, Miss Lynn." His words were clearly flirtatious, maybe even teasing, and yet for some reason, I almost believed him. My face flushed uncontrollably, and I spun around and darted back into my room. Even through the closed door, I could still hear his soft laughter echo in the hallway. Later, after I had calmed down, someone knocked on the door again. I didn't want to answer, but the person outside seemed especially persistent. In the end, I had no choice but to open the door in frustration. "What do you want now?" I snapped. "Why is it you again?" Andrew stood there, his brow furrowed so tightly it looked like it might snap. "Who else did you think it was?" "Rachel," he continued, "I've made up my mind. I'm gonna marry Emily. If you give us your blessing, I'm willing to still see you as my sister." "And what if I don't?" I asked. Andrew's eyes narrowed slightly, a dangerous glint flashing in them. "Then let me remind you, going against the three of us will do the Lynn family no good." I went cold all over. Of course. I knew better than anyone how much they cared about Emily. Hadn't I seen it all firsthand in my last life? "Fine," I said quietly. "I'll give you my blessing, but I want to know, how do you plan to repay my father for everything he did for you?" At that, Andrew's usually frosty expression actually softened a little. "I'll give up everything and take Emily away from here." I raised an eyebrow in surprise. I hadn't expected him to go that far for Emily. Andrew had climbed his way up in the military through real grit and discipline. Even the top brass had publicly praised him. But now he was saying he'd give all that up? Still, just because Andrew was willing, didn't mean Emily would be. My unexpected blessing seemed to earn me a rare moment of civility from him. "I know you liked me," Andrew said, "but it was Emily who saved us three when we were trapped in that snowstorm years ago. We swore to the heavens back then that we'd protect her for the rest of our lives." I stared at him, wide-eyed, almost unable to believe what I was hearing. A terrifying thought suddenly struck me. You mean, during the rescue mission, when there was that avalanche? He nodded. Yeah, that night, she defied everyone's warnings, climbed the snow-covered mountain alone, and risked her life to get us out. That's when I fell in love with her. The emotion in his eyes didn't seem fake. But I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing. What's so funny? He demanded. I'm laughing because all three of you are blind. You don't even know who actually saved your lives. No wonder your feelings changed so suddenly, all of you turning your backs on me to cozy up to Emily. So someone else had taken credit for what I had done. I shook my head with a bitter chuckle. Just remembered something, that's all. As I lowered my gaze, I caught sight of Emily walking over and nestling close to Andrew's side with that same calculated sweetness I remembered all too well. Andrew, can I talk to my sister alone for a moment? Emily asked sweetly. Andrew gave a doting nod and obediently went downstairs to wait. The moment he left, Emily's entire expression changed. Rachel Lynn, you're disgusting. Andrew has already decided to marry me, and you're still throwing yourself at him? What, scared they'll find out it wasn't you who saved them back then? Her pupils trembled. You know, she whispered. But she quickly regained her composure and let out a mocking laugh. So what if you do? They already believe it was me who saved them. Rachel Lynn, you were born to be my stepping stone, just like your pathetic mom. I stared at her, eyes wide, my voice shaking. What do you mean? Emily raised a brow smugly, a twisted smile playing on her lips. You don't even know how easy your idiot mother was to manipulate. I casually mentioned I was 3 months younger than you, and she lost her mind and jumped off a building. Honestly, we should thank her for dying so quickly. If she hadn't, my mom wouldn't have taken her place so easily. I couldn't hold back the fury exploding in my chest. I raised my hand and slapped her hard. But just as my palm was about to land, she let out a smug laugh and threw herself backward. A terrible sense of dread surged through me. With a sharp scream, Emily tumbled down the staircase. Andrew rushed over and knelt at her side in a panic, but Emily gently placed her hand on his cheek, whispering, Andrew, don't blame my sister. It's my fault. I stole you from her. She has every right to be upset. Peter and Michael charged into the room. The moment they saw Emily lying there, barely breathing, their eyes turned red with rage as they stared at me with hatred. I collapsed to the ground, shaking my head, repeating over and over, it wasn't me, she fell on her own. But all I got in return was Andrew's cold, bitter smile. I thought you'd learned your lesson. I thought you understood that love can't be forced. But clearly not. He turned to Michael. Lock her in the isolation room. Until I say otherwise, no one is to let her out. Cradling Emily in his arms with a face full of anguish, Andrew turned and walked away. I, overwhelmed and powerless, was dragged away in tears. They threw me into a tiny, suffocating isolation room. The cramped space made my heart pound wildly, my breath growing short, my face flushed and hot. They knew full well I had claustrophobia. But for Emily, they ignored my life-threatening fear. The panic spread through my body like poison. My breathing slowed, shallowed. I truly thought I was going to die. Just as I was losing consciousness, the isolation room door was kicked open with a violent crash. Before everything faded, I heard the rapid pounding of combat boots coming closer. When I opened my eyes again, the blinding overhead light pierced through me. My father's face filled my blurry vision, eyes wide in shock and joy. Rachel, you're awake. Thank God, you've been unconscious for 5 days. 5 days? That meant the wedding was the day after tomorrow. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw 3 familiar figures kneeling neatly at my bedside. Seeing Andrew's still defiant expression made my chest tighten with irritation. Dad, I said, forcing myself to speak. Just let it go. The wedding's almost here. My father closed his eyes with a pained sigh. All right, if that's what you want. The 3 of them looked stunned, clearly in disbelief. In the past, if I had been hurt because of them, they would have been punished to within an inch of their lives. But now, I ignored their shifting expressions and simply urged my father, please take me home. I need to get ready. There's garbage that needs to be taken out before the wedding. As soon as we got back, I went straight to the attic. It was filled with everything from my years growing up with those 3, handwritten notes, sketchbooks full of portraits, yellowing photographs, unsent love letters. Every item soaked in the memories of my youth. Each one I had once treasured, I now cleared out, piece by piece, as if emptying my heart along with them. By the time I was finished, night had already fallen. I returned to my bedroom and fell asleep the moment my head hit the pillow. A rustling sound woke me. I found my hands and feet tied tightly. I was stuffed into the wardrobe. Through the narrow slats of the closet door, I saw Emily humming a cheerful tune as she tried on my wedding dress. Just as she slipped it on, there was a knock at the door. As soon as the door opened, the person outside leaned in and kissed her without hesitation. Emily's eyes turned hazy from the kiss, but she still didn't forget to shoot me a taunting glance. In a breathy voice, she murmured, "Andrew, once you marry my sister, what's gonna happen to me?" "After you marry her," she continued sweetly, "just find some excuse to say I died. Once that's done, Peter and Michael can slip away too. Then we'll all be yours forever." Outside the wardrobe, their intimacy continued without shame. Inside, my heart was clenched so tightly it physically hurt. When Emily finally flung open the wardrobe door, I was already in tears. Her body was marked, disheveled, and she stood in front of me like a victor. "You know, the first time I saw you, I hated you so much. Why were you the precious daughter of the Lynn family? Why was I just a maid's child? From that day on, I swore I'd take everything that was yours." She leaned in closer, a twisted smile on her face. "Tomorrow at the wedding, just wait. I'll make sure you become the biggest disgrace in this entire compound." Leaving those words hanging in the air, she turned and left, triumphant. I sat alone inside that wardrobe all night. It wasn't until the wedding team, hired by my father, arrived the next morning that I finally struggled out of the ropes. I slipped into the wedding dress Ryan Carter had prepared for me and headed to the ceremony. I told myself everything would end today. Wearing the gown he chose, I walked down the red carpet step by step and stood calmly, waiting for the groom. Time passed, long past the appointed hour. Whispers spread among the guests below the stage. Finally, the doors burst open. My heart, which had been held high with anticipation, dropped instantly when I saw who entered: Peter and Michael. They gave me a smug, mocking smile and loudly declared, "The groom won't be coming today, folks." But before they could finish, the main doors were thrown open again. "Who says I'm not coming?" came a deep voice. Ryan Carter stepped into view, immediately drawing gasps from the crowd. "Wait, wasn't it supposed to be Peter?" someone began to ask. I didn't let them finish. I snatched the mic from the officiant and announced loudly to everyone, "Let me introduce my husband, Ryan Carter of Harlow." Ryan stepped up and laced his fingers with mine, a confident, proud smile on his lips. The entire crowd was stunned, but under Ryan's steady, commanding gaze, they quickly burst into thunderous applause. Compliments flew freely through the room, like confetti. It was a festive scene, except for Peter and Michael, whose faces had gone completely stiff. "Rachel Lynn, you really went all out," Peter sneered. "Tell us, how much did your billionaire daddy have to pay to get Commander Carter to play along with this act?" Their barbed words made my stomach turn. Here they were again, pretending to be noble and righteous. But the truth was, they had climbed to where they were using my father's resources. Every time they faced trouble, it was my father who stepped in to clean up the mess. Ryan noticed the change in my expression. He gently patted the back of my hand and stepped forward, placing himself directly in front of their sneering gazes. "I'm not blind," Ryan said coolly. "I don't mistake trash for treasure, and I certainly don't bite the hand that feeds me." His words silenced the room. Everyone present knew exactly what he meant. After all, everyone knew Peter, Michael, and Andrew had only received the Lynn family's support because they were raised as child grooms in our home. But those words, so casually spoken, were like gasoline on fire to them. Of all things, the one they hated most was hearing the term child groom. It was the greatest shame for these so-called prodigies who had always seen themselves as better than everyone else. Over the years, as they made names for themselves in their respective fields, people had gradually stopped mentioning their pasts. But now Ryan had exposed the truth for all to hear. Their faces turned as black as coal. Anger and humiliation flickered across their expressions, before finally settling into a sneer. "Ryan Carter, Peter scoffed. Do you even know what kind of woman you just married? You think she's some innocent heiress? He was getting more brazen, completely ignoring Ryan's steadily darkening expression. Bet you didn't know our little Miss Lynn was so desperate she drugged a man just to get into bed with him. Just a used-up tramp. Slap. Bang. A gunshot rang out at the same time as a sharp slap. The wedding guests screamed, diving for cover in a panic. Peter dropped to his knees, clutching his leg and crying out in pain. Michael staggered back, clutching his reddened face, eyes wide in disbelief. The man who'd struck them was none other than their revered mentor, Mr. Zhao. You ungrateful bastards, he roared. Mr. Lin gave you everything, treated you like his own sons, and this is how you repay him? You're not even fit to call yourselves human. Peter and Michael stared at Mr. Zhao in stunned confusion. They couldn't understand why the teacher who had always treated them like family would suddenly turn against them. But I, standing there silently, only smiled coldly. I knew the truth. Back then, when my father brought those boys into the Lin household, he had been worried he wouldn't be able to raise them well enough on his own. My father, George Lin, had paid a fortune to invite Mr. Zhao. The Zhou family had been renowned Confucian scholars for generations, and though Mr. Zhou had long since retired from teaching, my father swallowed his pride, as one of the wealthiest men in the region, and publicly knelt just to ask him to take those 3 boys as students. Eventually, it was my father's sincerity that moved Mr. Zhou. He broke his own rule and took in Andrew, Peter, and Michael as his private disciples. It was only because of that mentorship that they were introduced early on to members of high society and built the connections that paved the way for their future success in business, politics, and the military. But they always thought it was because of their own natural talent that Mr. Zhao saw something special in them. How ridiculous. If it weren't for my father, those 3 would probably still be out picking through garbage just to feed themselves. As Peter and Michael stood stunned under Mr. Zhao's furious scolding, the doors to the hall burst open again. 2 people, tightly bound with ropes, were thrown inside. Everyone turned to look, and sure enough, it was Emily and Andrew. They were both a mess, their clothes wrinkled and faces dirty. The luggage they'd brought with them had been ripped open, spilling out gold bars and other valuables. The moment Andrew saw me, he began shouting, Rachel Lynn, forced love never tastes sweet. Have some self-respect. I already told you. I'd rather die than marry you. You can tie me up once, but you can't control me forever. I raised an eyebrow. He still hadn't realized what was going on. He actually thought I was the one begging to marry him. But before I could say anything, someone else stepped forward for me. You think marrying George Lin's daughter is some kind of insult? My father's stern voice rang out. Andrew's arrogant expression immediately faltered. No matter how impressive they tried to look outside, whenever they stood before my father, the man who funded them, raised them, and trained them, they couldn't hide their unease. Andrew swallowed hard, his eyes darting nervously. The silver-tongued man who was always so good at arguing couldn't say a single word. He could only stare helplessly as my father, dressed in a traditional Zhongshan suit, came to stand right in front of him. Emily quickly dropped to her knees, tears brimming in her eyes. She crawled over and grabbed my father's pants leg. Dad, I've always only seen Rachel as your real daughter. My father abruptly cut her off, his voice sharp with suppressed rage. Emily flinched but forced herself to keep speaking. Uncle, Andrew and I are truly in love. Rachel already has everything. Why does she have to break us apart too? Beside me, Ryan Carter let out a low laugh, like he had just heard the world's most ironic joke. And who's really the one breaking others apart? He said coldly. Emily, did you think your little scheme all those years ago was flawless? Seems like you won't cry until you see the coffin. Emily's face went white, panic flashing in her eyes. What are you talking about? That's nonsense. But Ryan didn't even look at her. He simply raised his hand and signaled someone to enter. A wave of dread swept over Emily as a man was dragged in and thrown to the floor beside her. Covered in blood and barely conscious, the man was instantly recognized by Andrew, Peter, and Michael. Dr. Su, the physician who had saved their lives during the avalanche years ago. Using the last of his strength, Dr. Shu lunged forward and clutched Emily's neck. You filthy woman! You seduced me into helping you forge the rescue records, and then you tried to kill me to destroy the evidence. If I hadn't been lucky enough to survive, you would have gotten away with it." Emily gasped, eyes rolling back as his fingers tightened. Only then did the others rush forward to pull him off her. Even as he was dragged away, Dr. Shu kept shouting, spilling everything Emily had tried so hard to bury. The truth spilled out like beans from a broken jar, revealing all her deceit and filth to the world. The faces of the three men twisted into expressions of disbelief. "You're joking," Andrew muttered. "You're saying it was Rachel who saved us back then?" "No, that can't be. She was traveling overseas during that time." But his voice grew weaker as the truth slowly dawned on him. He rushed over to me and yanked up my sleeve, revealing the old, jagged scars winding across my arm. He collapsed to the floor. "It was really you. It was you who saved us." Peter and Michael's expressions shifted instantly as well, the color draining from their faces. Emily, now exposed, stood frozen in place, pale as death and unable to speak a single word. When Ryan saw Andrew still gripping my wrist, he narrowed his eyes, raised his leg, and kicked him hard. Andrew tumbled across the floor. "You blind idiot," Ryan spat. "Stay the hell away from her. Don't dirty Rachel's hands." Emily, who seemed to still care for Andrew, rushed over to help him up the moment he hit the ground. But not everyone was willing to look the other way. Someone nearby shoved Emily aside with a cold flick of their arm. "Get lost." Emily's eyes were truly red now. She clung tightly to Andrew, still trying to explain, her voice trembling. "Andrew, you have to believe me. I was really the one who saved you back then. Don't you remember how Rachel always loved throwing her money around? She must have bribed Dr. Shu to lie and trick you." But Andrew had regained his senses by now. His voice was filled with fury. "Nonsense. I saw it with my own eyes. My arm was sliced by an icicle, and we 3 grown men were bedridden for nearly 2 weeks. How is it that you, the so-called rescuer, didn't have a single scratch? You lied to me. You lied to all of us." Emily shook her head and sobbed like a pitiful flower drenched in rain. But no trace of sympathy flickered in Andrew's eyes. Those who had once faked their deaths just to escape me now knelt at my feet, filled with guilt and remorse. But I simply leaned slightly toward Ryan Carter. He understood me immediately. "Take them away," he ordered. Ryan's men acted swiftly. In no time, the wedding venue was cleared of all disruption. Not a trace of the previous chaos left behind. The elite guests present also quickly composed themselves, behaving as if nothing had ever happened. Ryan led me through the remainder of the ceremony. When it came time to offer tea to my new mother-in-law, I was stunned to see one of the most dignified socialites in the compound, crying like a child, completely disregarding her image. She clutched my hands emotionally and said, "Rachel, dear, thank you. Thank you for marrying my no-good son. I have to explain about that second marriage rumor. That wasn't real. He only got married for a mission assigned by his unit. It was fake." I looked over at Ryan, surprised. In my past life, he never remarried until his death. I'd always assumed he was mourning for someone named Wang Qi. But now I knew the truth? "And those 3 kids," she added eagerly, "they're adopted. Ryan's never had a real wife. My son's still pure." As she rambled further, her words grew increasingly outrageous. Embarrassed, Ryan quickly cut her off. His face, always so calm and composed, was now burning red at the ears. I couldn't help letting out a soft laugh. When he heard me, Ryan paused, then slowly laced his fingers through mine, a smug smile playing at the corners of his lips like a cat that had stolen a fish. It was a day of celebration, and Ryan kept pouring me drink after drink. By the time he carried me bridal style into our new bedroom, I was already tipsy. But what greeted us inside stunned everyone. On the bright red wedding bed were 4 tangled bodies. The clash of red and white was shocking, and the shameless scene had everyone's jaws on the floor. Before I could even react, Ryan quickly covered my eyes with his hand, blocking my view. Through the blurred gaps between his fingers, I could only see tangled limbs. I struggled, trying to pull his hand away, but he whispered low in my ear, his tone laced with implication, "Don't look. It's bad luck." Gasps and exclamations echoed around the room. The 4 figures on the bed finally seemed to realize what was happening and scrambled to cover themselves. Ryan moved fast. In less than an hour, he had uncovered everything. Turns out, after Emily's plans completely fell apart, she grew desperate. She tried to drug Andrew, hoping to force him into marrying her. But the wine she prepared was mistakenly consumed by Peter and Michael as well. What was meant to be a two-person scandal turned into an all-out four-person disaster. Seeing no way out, Emily dragged them all down with her. She figured her life was already ruined. Might as well bring them with her. After that, my father finally saw them for what they were. 3 ungrateful idiots. Not only did he throw them out of the Lynn family for good, he also cut off every connection and opportunity he'd ever opened for them. From that point on, they were on their own. As for me, I could only say one thing: they deserved it. In my past life, the 3 of them faked their deaths to run off, ruined my reputation, stole my family fortune, all just to protect Emily. This time, fate came full circle. They got exactly what was coming to them. After the chaos of the wedding banquet, Ryan arranged a second ceremony to make it up to me. This time, it was just close family. Under their blessings, we officially became husband and wife. Married life was sweet as honey. Ryan treated me like a queen. If I so much as mentioned a craving at night, it'd be on my table by morning. He spoiled me so much it was almost frightening. I started to feel uneasy. One day, I finally couldn't help asking, "Why are you so good to me?" Ryan was gently playing with my hand as I asked. Ryan gently played with my hand and said, "Back when I was little, some spoiled little girl took advantage of me because she thought I was good-looking, stole my first kiss, and then completely forgot about it like it never happened." I blinked, confused, staring at him as I searched through my memories. And then suddenly, a scene surfaced, so vivid it made my face burn. Before my father adopted the 3 child grooms, he used to leave me at the neighbor's house whenever he got too busy with work. I was a total face addict back then, and I shamelessly took full advantage of being young. I was always all over the handsome older boy next door. One day, I even stole his first kiss without a second thought. As the heat crept up my face, Ryan's satisfied smile deepened. "You know, some heartless girl used to chase me around every day shouting, 'I'm gonna marry you, big brother. I'm gonna marry you.' Then she grew up and forgot all about me." My cheeks turned red as a tomato. Flustered and embarrassed, I reached out and pinched his waist in retaliation. But Ryan just laughed and pulled me into his arms. "Good thing someone else didn't recognize your worth," he whispered. "Otherwise, I might not have had the chance." Only then did I realize, when he gave me the wedding dress and said he'd admired me for a long time, he wasn't joking. Thank goodness fate gave me a second chance. Later, I heard about the others at a banquet. Stripped of the Lynn family's protection, the 3 of them eventually became nobodies. Once hailed as prodigies, they fell from grace. One even became addicted to gambling. They lost everything. Even Emily, the one they claimed to love so deeply in my past life, they ended up selling her. Unable to cope with the reality of her downfall, Emily set a fire that consumed all of them. No remains were ever recovered. They vanished, erased by time. When I heard the news, I quietly tightened my grip on Ryan's hand. Turning my head, I saw my father looking at me with gentle, loving eyes. This time around, I had no more regrets.